Okay, hi everybody. We're gonna go ahead and get started. So we'll start with announcements. So the hack challenge team matching form is due tomorrow at the end of the day. And again, like the hack challenge is like your final project. So you're gonna need a team to do that, and you'll be required to fill out this form as well. So make sure you get this code like now or before you leave. And then as for today's demo, again, we're going over like launched effects and launched effects and UI events and some dumb components. So our demo is gonna kind of touch on all of that today. So before we start, I'm gonna go ahead and like walk through the code a little bit because it might be a little confusing. And then again, there is starter code for this week, so you can go ahead and download that from the course textbook. And so yeah. So this week's um demo is kind of like usual, like a progression through a couple of screens. There's like a lot more UI stuff this time. I might have gotten a little too excited about the UI, but like don't worry about any like confusing code in there. We'll be focusing on what we learned in lecture. So um we kind of have it's like a music-based app. So you kind of think about it like Spotify has a mini player. And you can click on the mini player to get to a larger player in a different screen. But to start, if we click, you're going to be sent to this like delay screen. Oh, I'm actually on the wrong one. But yeah, you should be taken to a delay screen and you'll kind of be stuck on that until we implement some of the code. So again, to kind of go over the file structure, it's still the same like model view, view model, like structure. We have our repository. It's like dummy data again. You don't need to worry about that. And then a view model with some functions that you'll be using. And to start, we kind of divided this into two parts. And to start, you'll be working on a launched effect to kind of get us out of this loading state that we're stuck in here. Um, yeah. So you can go ahead and get started on that. There's some hints in the textbook that'll help you out with the syntax. And once that's like correct, you'll be able to like click on the mini player and move on to the next screen. So you'll have about like 10-ish minutes to do this first part, and then I'll walk through it, and then we'll start on the second part. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and start like the walkthrough. So, just to go through the code a little bit more. So essentially our first, again, a launched effect is kind of something that we call once, like at the start of like screen being loaded or some composable being loaded. So it's called once, and then it kind of help like does one action, I guess. And so there's various use cases for this kind of thing. In this particular example, so in the starter code, this first launch effect is actually creating the delay. So our loading screen is actually like a fake loading screen. It just waits for about 200 milliseconds and then it sends out a UI event, which is what we want to listen for in order to move on to the next screen. So if we look at this navigate to player function or player with delay function, this is in the view model. And again, you'll see it's actually just a delay. And then we call this UI event, or we update this navigate event.value. We update that to be this UI event and then player screen. So our navigation event or this navigate event is essentially us navigating to our next screen. In this case, it's going to be the player screen or like the screen with the big like player card on it. Um, so yeah, in this case, we want to use this launched event to navigate to the next screen. And this is actually a little like atypical. Usually, you want to use navigation in like how you usually do it by passing in some navigation function or using the nav controller. But in this case, because we kind of gave control to the view model is actually, we're waiting on the view model before we can actually do any kind of navigation. So we passed off the control from the view to the view model in terms of navigation. So this is why we want to use a launched effect in this case, because we're essentially, again, providing this UI event once we finish the delay. And so we need something else to listen for that in order to actually do the navigation. So that's what our second launched effect is actually waiting for, or what it's actually going to do. So launched effects. Again, we have the syntax there in the textbook. And so we're like listening for, I guess you could say, the navigate event, which we defined up here, to change. And that just indicates to the program that like we're ready to navigate to the next screen. And so then we do a navigate event and we have to consume it. Consume system. And this is another property of just the UI event. It's like a one-time thing that we consume once and then like it's like done. So we don't do it again. And we do a lambda for destination. And so we also pass in the nav controller here. You could also pass in a function like how we normally do it. You pass in a function that will navigate for you. But in this case, we just pass in the nav controller. You can do nav controller.navigate, and that will take you to the destination that we specify. Um, so just to explain that a little bit more. So here again, we have a UI event and we're passing in this like player screen, which is where we're trying to navigate next. And so this is like what the destination is that we're referring to here. So we kind of pick that up from the UI event and that's how we navigate. Does anyone have any questions about that? I know it can be a little confusing. Okay. Um, yeah, so now we can move on to the second part, or I guess if we run this first, we can see that once we click on this now, it does the loading for a bit and then it moves on to the next screen. And then again, what this second launch effect just did was just listen for the UI event that this launch effect kind of sent out. So it got that event and then it navigated. So now if you notice, like we're moving on to the next part of the demo, which is like moving or making this a dumb component instead of like programmed or like statically programmed, I guess, within locally programmed within the component. So if you notice, this mini card is like dynamic, right? You can see it's like switching songs. There's like a bar that's changing. This is like all logic that's handled in the player view model. But if we look at the big card, and if you look at the code, it's like all statically programmed or locally programmed. So we want to make sure that we keep our components dumb, right? Which just means that we're not doing any kind of logic within our UI components. This is going to be the player card. So we just want to go ahead and use the view model to try to pass in arguments that we need to display within this player card. And again, that's more explained further within like the demo instructions. So yeah, you can go ahead and get started on that. And the goal again is just to have this player card end up looking like the same as like the mini one in the sense that things are moving and songs are switching. Okay, does anyone want any more time to work on this or like have any questions? Okay, I can go ahead and start walking through then. So I guess if we really look at this, it's not um it's kind of already a dumb component, but like there's cases where you could do a lot more within just this composable, and then that would be an issue. So you could think about this part more as like tying or connecting the view model to the UI. And so if we want to start by looking at the player screen where we're actually calling this player card, we see that we get this view model, and we're going to want to use that in order to get our data. So Um, yeah, instead of having all these, again, hard-coded or like already predefined as mutable states, we want to pass everything in so that this component is more like, I guess, robust. So we can pass in our view model. It's going to be of type player view model. And we're going to set that equal to a hilt. And yeah, probably from now on, you'll be using like the hilt kind of setup just for dependency injection and all this MVVM stuff. So it's good to get familiar with that. Um, we'll want, actually, I'm not sure that we need that here. What we want is like our data that we need. So we're gonna need pretty much everything we have here. So we'll need a title that'll be of type string, artist as well. We need the is playing to decide whether or not, I guess, what icon our play button is. Playing is going to be of type Boolean. And we have a progress and a bar that just shows how far or how filled in the linear progress bar should be. And that'll be a float. And then we have one more thing, which should be what the button is going to do when we click on it. And that's just going to take us back to the previous page, I believe, or it says here, I guess, on play, pause clicked. So that's what our play button does, actually. And that'll just be a function. Okay, so we should get an error here where, or I guess we are using is playing, but unclick for this play button should now be, we're using the function we passed in. So on play pause clicked, we call that. And then where we're actually calling this player card, we need to get like data for that to fill it in, right? And since we're only displaying one and it's kind of changing on its own dynamically, that's where the view model comes in. So if we take a look at this view model, we have a bunch of stuff going on here. That's just because we have more moving parts this time. So these are all states. So it's just like the mutable state that we just kind of got rid of in a composable or the component. So these are all kind of just keeping track of dynamic data and they're like updating. And as they update, we need to update our UI. So the way to do that is using states again. So if I find my screen. Okay. So kind of as was written in the demo, we want to use the or access the states that are in the view model. View model. And that's like the syntax for it. So we'll collect as states. And we do the same for everything we need. So if we look at current song, or at the repository even, we see that song is like a data class that we've like defined. It has a title and an artist. So that'll cover our first two arguments for the card. And we'll need the is playing. So val playing view model. And then if you hit the dot again, it'll like show you what your choices are. Um, is playing, and we'll collect that as state as well. And progress is our float. Progress with the state. And then we can directly access the on play pause clicked function. Just because that's a function already, it's like not updating, I guess. And then if we put all this data inside our player card, song, we can say title equals current song. Oh, and then we have to fix this import. Again, the by is a little annoying, so I just choose a runtime and change that to star, and that just imports all the runtime functions. And that should be good. If we press, again, use a dot, we'll see artist, or that's title. Artist. Playing. Progress. And our on play pause clicks is we have to send use a lambda again because we're not directly calling the function right now. We're just passing it. And that'll be our view model dot on play pause clicked. Yeah, and that should be all the data we need. Oh, we need to get rid of these. And yeah, so we don't need the view model here because again, this is a dumb component. We're just passing in the data directly. And that should be in the format that we need. Yeah. And so if we run it now, okay, so then we see that this is updating on its own again. I guess just to explain a little bit more, the state in the view model, the reason why it's updating on its own is because we're continually collecting the state in the player card. So whenever the state in the view model is updating, which we have a function that like kind of increments this for the progress bar, like we're automatically like recomposing the UI, I guess. So that's how this bar is updating without us actually doing any like logic or like additions inside the player card. Um, yeah. So I think that's all for the demo. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So I guess we're done a little early today. Um, we do have an attendance form. Yeah, and there's also A4 feedback form. And then remember, if you didn't get the group formation form in the beginning, just come to the front and grab that really quick so you have that. Yeah, and have a good rest of your day. Mhm. Oh, yeah. So guess I didn't get around to that entirely, but yeah, it'd be in the view model. Um, you'd have to make a function for that, and you'd just be so how the view model like the songs are being displayed within the view model is just looping through the list in the repository. So you would just make a function that would like I guess skip or like increment the index of the list by one so that you'd skip a song. Yeah.
I didn't grab the.
Oh yeah. The group formation.